Welcome to Tech This Way.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Well, in this COVID lockdown, I mean, we're still lucky enough to be operating somehow. And so we're also working on a few initiatives to help small and medium businesses here in the Philippines. So we're trying to work to maybe either get them to be export ready by the time that this is over, so that once things normalizes, we can ship out immediately. So we're using this lockdown, like we're looking at a period of maybe 3 months before everything normalizes. But this is a
When
good
is
time for us to.
the official lockdown until?
The lockdown started March 15th officially.
Mm-hmm.
It was announced March 12th. Um, and so it's gonna be here for a month, like till April 12th, I believe, of next month. Right. So, but I'm not sure if everything will normalize because basically everybody that's sick is starting to go to the hospital, and so um uh the healthcare system is overwhelmed, I guess, like in most healthcare systems around the world. Is it the same for Malaysia?
We are lucky that I think we are managing it quite well. So
Oh, that's
the
good. Yeah, you
hospitals are
actually
not
have a lot of
complaining yet.
tests already, right?
Mm.
So that's good. Yeah, so
Okay.
with us, it's like, let's see when this normalizes. But the government is already asking us to create programs for small and medium businesses because they're really affected by this. They don't have sales, and so they don't have people to sell to and stuff like that. And so the thing is, it's like it's only the countries where the COVID is normalizing where we can sell to. So, for example, now our sales in Japan and Korea are starting to pick up because it's better in their areas now. But for example, in the States, people are like, okay, send us some stuff, but you'll have to give us credit. So stuff like that. We've
Mm.
actually,
Mm.
um, well, on top of like helping small businesses export and making them compliant and stuff like that, we actually are already in the point of crowdfunding for SME orders right now
Mm. Oh, hang
because
on.
they need.
Okay, before you jump straight
Yeah,
into it,
yeah,
let's just take a step back a little bit, Mel.
yeah.
So help the audience know a little bit about Mel Nava and how you began with 1Export. I know the history,
Okay,
but not other people do.
sure. Okay, so we basically started as an idea, and our first competition where we validated the idea was Maybank FinTech Challenge in 2015. So actually, Maybank FinTech was actually a platform that gave us an opportunity to validate, if we are, if we are on the right track or if our idea was good enough, right?
Mm.
So back then, in 2015, we started with a completely different team. We were, of course, a group of females. We still advocate women empowerment, but now we empower not just people from that space, but also people from PWD and people from the LGBTQ community. But more than that, it was Maybank FinTech Challenge really gave us a chance to uh, see if our idea was good enough. And
Mm.
because you were with a lot of startups that were in different stages, we actually learned a lot from them, and we figured out how we can make sure that the idea becomes a reality, right?
Mm.
So the idea was there where we wanted to help small businesses export. Initially, it was still a very scrappy idea because we didn't have the tech product, or
Mm.
we didn't even have traction. And
Who was
so
we at
after
the
joining.
time, and what were you doing
I'm
then?
sorry.
Who was
Well,
we and what were you
I
doing?
was still in MBA actually at that time. And then some of my colleagues were still in their corporate jobs, right?
Mm,
But after a couple of validations, we decided to go full time in April 2017. We said we wanted to really help businesses export. And at that time, when even with the rise of Alibaba and all of these platforms like Amazon, people in the Philippines were still very reluctant to go online. And so when we told them we'd help them export, um, the way we sold our product initially was through a consulting model. So they
mm,
gave us service fees, and we helped them with all of their exporting needs. Um, so we started as a bootstrap startup, meaning, what we would do is, okay, tell us what you need for exporting, pay us a fee, and we will help you export. Um,
mm,
we had about 10 customers that was using that model. And then we realized after having our first 10 customers that um, the services that they need were similar. They needed help with documentation. They
mm.
needed help with labeling for export markets. And they needed, first and foremost, to find buyers abroad. And so from that insight, we decided to streamline 1Export services to tech, because what we didn't want from the very beginning was to create a tech product that nobody would use, right? Or create a product that was not very well validated, and then what we will do is just force people to use that tech product. So when we first started, we realized that the documentation was taking a long time because of the mistakes that suppliers would put in, or MSMEs would put in their forms, right? So there was a lot of back and forth on top of the bureaucracy that you already had with government agencies. And so what we've done was we've streamlined them where they upload the documents. We can see if there are mistakes on the documents. And then we tell them to amend the documents. If the documents are correct, then the process becomes faster. So for processing documents in the Philippines, before it would take 270 days. But so far, we brought that number down to 55 working days in the Philippines.
So
So
where
that
was
means,
the delay? Within the 270 days, where was the longest part of the delay?
well, the objective really, the pain point really was coming from the fact that you can't export if you don't have the documents.
Mm,
Uh, if you don't have the proper documents, so you can't export to the US if you don't have US FDA, or you can't like let your documents out in customs if you didn't have certain FDA requirements, right? Um, but aside from the fact that that was a requirement, the pain point also was there was a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of mistakes that micro, small, and medium enterprises were doing
mm.
because they didn't know what to do with with filling up certain export documentation.
What kind
So
of
that was the first.
products are these companies exporting typically?
Oh, we started working with food and agriculture products. One,
Mm,
because it was the hardest one to export, meaning there was a lot of regulation involved. So you weren't just talking about making sure that you had the proper documents for export, like shipping documents, right? It wasn't just making sure you had your bill of lading or your certificate of origin. It was also, if you exported products for food that were food or agriculture products, then the concerns were about making sure that they are FDA compliant,
mm.
that the rules of labeling follow the state labeling rules, right? So it's different if it was European labels, or if it was different if it was US labels, right? And so a lot of these compliances were really bogging down small and medium businesses in the Philippines from exporting. And actually, we've also started to validate in Indonesia. We realized that that was also the same thing. They didn't know the regulations, and so they would rather not export. If they sent out products abroad, it was something that like one piece or two pieces, but they don't send it in big volumes or big quantities because they were too afraid of regulation, right?
Mm.
So
And these
the
companies
platform
would
intends
be
to
in Manila or throughout of Philippines?
all throughout the Philippines. So we would service companies in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So even in the far-flung provinces, we would service them.
Mm.
And the reason why we're able to service them, one, Manila is where the main offices are. So if they send their documents, and second, we're online. So if they send their documents online, then definitely we're able to process everything that is required.
Mm.
So yeah. Yeah, initially it was to service compliances, not just for documentation, but also for labeling. So currently our system now has an AI function where you take a photo of your product and we convert the products to the market ready standard. Almost immediately. So right now we're still in the process of testing that, but right now I think you can convert the label to about um, six translations abroad, and then
Mm.
right now we're incorporating market standards. So for example, in Australia it's called nutrition information. In the US it's called nutrition facts. So certain technicalities like that we're starting to incorporate in the platform depending on where the small or medium business wants to export.
Mm.
um, that's the second function of the platform. The third function is we're able to sell them to markets abroad.
Mm.
Right now we have a distributor network where we send the products abroad, but we're also starting to tap immigrant networks that want to start a business and invest in small and medium business products. So in the Philippines,
Immigrants where?
where
In immigrants who Filipinos who are in other countries
immigrants, for
or?
example, we're starting with immigrants based in the United States. So, for example, overseas Filipino workers or overseas Filipino investors, um, they're located in certain areas, right? But some
Mm.
of them have to travel 3 hours to go to an Asian store. And so we tap the immigrants who are based in, for example, Pittsburgh and not in New York because they have to travel so many hours to go to New York, right, for an Asian store. And so we tap them because one thing we've realized with small and medium business products is it's harder to sell. Even if you say, oh, they're compliant and and they're market ready. Um, the behavior with distributors abroad for the importers abroad is they will only take what's popular, right? And so that already um, you small and medium businesses will not have so much of a chance to export if nobody will buy their products. Of course, you have platforms like Amazon, right? So where you can bring your products to a fulfillment center. But as you know, distribution is not just about online, right? It's also about being omnipresent. You have to be in all channels to establish a level of credibility. And
Mm.
in platforms like Amazon, there are fulfillment centers that will require you to go on consignment. And if you're a small or medium business, you don't necessarily have that capacity because you have to get paid for your products, right? You can't always consign, right?
Mm. So
So
you're saying that this migrant worker in Pittsburgh, they will go onto your platform and you will send the products directly from the Philippines to them?
yes. So basically, we send them in smaller boxes. So we send them maybe the ticket size is about 500 to 1,500 US dollars. So basically, we put them in a carton, we pack them, and then we ship it from Manila to to a fulfillment center in Los Angeles. And that fulfillment center in Los Angeles will bring it to different migrant workers, for example, in Pittsburgh. So those are initiatives that we're doing because what we've realized is while you have purchasers abroad, small and medium business brands are new, right? And they're upcoming. And sometimes if you're a purchaser abroad, you don't necessarily know them. Um, and so either you only get very few quantities or you don't get at all. Especially in the time of COVID and you have an upcoming recession that is looming, these purchasers will only buy fast-moving products so they can get rid of their products immediately. They will not try and test out small and medium business brands. And so that was our effort because we are really committed in terms of helping small and medium businesses export. And so the last feature of 1Export, and this really got when we were at Maybank, is to really help in terms of financing. A lot of small, medium businesses need financing. And so if you get money from the bank, normally you have issues when it comes to approval. Of course, like Maybank has initiatives for small and medium businesses to get loans. But for example, sometimes when you have to process an order, even if you give all of the documents, that's not enough. So what we've done in the past few months was we've started to crowdfund orders, give them a better return versus like the stock market. And it's a short-term loan that we borrow from individuals who want to invest in small and medium businesses, and then eventually give them a chance to give small and medium businesses a chance to produce their products and export. And then we charge the buyer for, because we have to lend the buyer some money to take on small and medium business products. So those are the four things that we're currently doing right now. Of course, integrating with tech. And since, last time when we were in Maybank, we were actually a team of 3. Now we're actually a team of 16. So we've grown significantly.
Nice.
And we're growing every month. Yeah.
So if we go back to the first business, your original business, in helping out the SMEs. Now, is that pretty much a lot of automated processing now, as opposed to before where you had to do it almost like a consulting basis from one to one of the SMEs?
Yeah. So most of our processes are now automated, especially now with a work from home scenario. I mean, with the COVID situation, it's good that we were able to automate before this happened, because now at least since most of the stuff are done online, it's really just about coordination. The only times that we are offline or we have to manually process is when we have to submit the documents to the regulating bodies. But everything is done online, from talking to our buyers, processing our payments. So everything is done online.
So which countries are your biggest exports right now?
Right now, we sell to Australia, US, Singapore, and Qatar.
And how many SMEs are you serving today?
We have about 318 registered MSMEs in our platform. We grew significantly when we launched the tech in December of 2019.
And in terms of volume of export, are you able to share?
Well, in terms of volume, we're able to ship out roughly for SME products about 2 to 3 containers a month. We are able to our biggest commercial value would be $20,000 a year, or less than that. Our average would probably be about $10,000 to help like an SME grow. Out of the 318, we're exporting 1/3 of our SMEs.
Okay.
The
now
rest we are helping to be export ready.
Okay. So it sounds like you've also gone a little bit into the logistics side of it, having to pack these things and putting them on shipment containers. How does that go?
Well, for the logistics, you work with freight forwarders and partners. And I think the reason for that is because there are a lot of people in that space and we really don't want to compete anymore. So we work with different partners in the logistics space to make sure that the things are optimized. What we try and do on our end is to make sure that the products are export ready and that they are compliant, and then they are all of quality before we put them in the container. So it's really more of that. But for the logistics side, the shipping side, we pass it off to different providers just because they also have the network. 1Export would like to focus on the compliance and selling aspect of exports versus just the logistics, because we already have a lot of people in that space, and we would rather just partner with people versus compete.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, the exciting part, I think, is really the helping the SMEs to market their product. So,
Yes.
since you are operating all the way in Manila, how do you reach out to the markets in Australia and the US and Singapore and all that?
Well, currently same way that we reach out with even our partners in Indonesia, we really make sure that we service them every day. We call them. It's really about customer service. We update them with the status of their orders, or we update them with the current suppliers. So that's what we've been doing on our end.
How do you get the buyers in the first place?
We work with trade offices abroad, right? So we work with trade offices in the Philippines based in, for example, San Francisco or Indonesia or Singapore, and then they help us with different either getting buyers or getting suppliers. So it's really with the help of the government. And our function is to be able to help small and medium businesses. So it actually makes sense because at least somehow the government promotes exports, right? So with our service, they're also able to reach certain targets because we enable small and medium businesses to export.
And using those migrant workers in those countries, that's a smart way of expanding your market further. How did you reach out to all the migrant workers? I know there's Filipinos everywhere in the world.
Yes.
How do you raise your brand for them?
Initially, of course, we work with Filipino online groups. So there are a lot of groups that are available on Facebook, right? Viber, which is the main communication channel that Filipinos use. So we reach out to them through that. We also reach out through the trade attaches that are based, for example, in San Francisco. And so, especially in the time of COVID, where a lot of migrant workers will be losing their jobs because they work in the service industry and there is downfall in tourism right now. It's something that we are really advocating because it's a way for them to augment their current income. We also reach out to fulfillment centers that refer us to different networks and in different markets. And so we try to be as creative as possible. Of course, currently we also sell to traditional wholesalers and retailers. But our goal is to be able to help small and medium businesses. And the only way we're able to do that really is if we make sure that they have sales. And for them to have sales, we need people to believe in them. And when we did the whole when we did a whole analysis, the people that believe in them are the ones that likely want to start a business, right? What they believe in the product, and they'll say, I want to bring this to my country because this is not yet available here. And so it's really that insight where it's from that insight where it's like, okay, let's give them that chance. They want it, let's give them that chance. And to just piece out all of the players together, like in terms of logistics, us in compliance, and getting them together, right? And then of course government. So
I'm actually curious from the actual items themselves. Number one, you mentioned is like food products. So what types of food are this? And when they export it out, is it exported to Filipinos themselves to consume, or it's for the locals out there in those countries? What kind of things are these?
So right now we service the migrant community, so the Asian markets. Um, uh, it's really like local delicacies. So it's like
So it's like balut being exported as well now?
not balut, like maybe calamansi. It's a Philippine lemon, right?
Mm,
It's like exporting sambal from Indonesia to Indonesians, right?
right.
So it's really that it's from that concept where it's like they miss these products from the Philippines. They're not widely available, and it's really finding them a channel from and these are the people that are really looking for it. So
So
yeah.
what are these things? I'm not too familiar with the Filipino
Um,
food. What is it?
so you're talking about calamansi, which is a
Mm.
Philippine lemon, turmeric. People are also looking for cacao. So there are different local delicacies they're also looking for, like champurrado or like mushroom chips. What are the other things that you've been requested? Garlic chips, for
Oh,
example. Um, and then some, of course, like beauty products that, like certain beauty regimens that are available here but are not available in the States because they're not widely known or popular.
mm,
So those are the things that are being asked of us.
mm. So from a service standpoint, when you go to a new country, so how many countries now you were saying? So it's US, Australia, Indonesia,
Qatar and
Singapore.
Singapore, yes.
Mm. So when
So right
you
now, Singapore.
so when you go into a new country, do you have to be there and speak to the importers on that side to understand exactly what the compliance are?
Okay, so normally what we would do is we would go through like an accelerator program. So for example, in Indonesia, we go through an accelerator program that introduces us to their network. And so we don't necessarily have to speak the language per se. Or also, we also go through uh, like a network of people that can help us through, right? Um, so either we go through government or we go through somebody that knows the person, allowing us to build credibility. And then the other things that we would go into would be, uh, you know, like we would also go through the migrant workers. So normally, for example, people in the Asian stores that are purchasing would maybe be a Filipino or
Mm,
an Asian, and so you try and speak the same language, and so that's how we go through it. Like that's communication is universal. You just have to make sure that you really empathize and you are able to connect with them in a way that um, most people won't be able to.
mm. So what are you doing to expand the SMEs that you reach out to in the Philippines?
Well,
What's a success for you?
right now, of course, like our success factor would be to make sure that they export, right? That is still our major goal. And so we are trying to be creative with solutions. That was why we are launching an immigrant distribution network where we really tap into the migrants that want the products and the SMEs that want their products in that market, right? We're trying to refine it a little more so we can actually monitor inventory and we can actually support in terms of financing. um, so those are certain things that we look into, but definitely that for us is a success. We expand our base by working with government, but we also try and really look into what are the current problems of small and medium businesses at this time. Because sometimes it can be compliance, sometimes it can be supply chain, and try as much as possible to help them wherever we can. So sometimes if they have problems with operations, we have helped them in terms of like, okay, we'll be the one to sticker for you. right? Or we'll be the one to process the certain things for you. Just send us the product, right? So we've been able to do those things for them.
These companies, you would have a very sticky relationship with them. Once they export, they will continue using you guys, right?
Well, of course, what we try and do as a platform is first we try to be as agnostic as possible. So, for example, if they process documents on our platform, we make sure that the small and medium business they own the assets, they own the export license, so that at any point where they want to export on their own, they can, right? That is what we're really trying to push for. We're not trying to say, oh, you're going to just export through us, right? Because, of course, what if they have other opportunities, right? Then they don't have to go through us. It's something that we really advocate because we position ourselves as an enabler versus like as just a trader. We feel like small and medium businesses will still go through us because they will always need to check with regulations, right? They will always need to, they will always need to process documents. There's a certain guarantee that we do because, for example, if you are a buyer abroad and you want certain products shipped out, we make sure that the products are stickered properly, they're labeled properly, quality checks also, like there are no damages in packages and all of these things, right? So I feel like what really sets us apart is service because we make sure that at any point in time, you're able to, we're able to deliver the best quality service to our suppliers and buyers, right? And so I guess that really is the reason why they stay with us. And so sometimes, for example, even if they go through, I mean, you don't have to take all of the services in our platform. So if you just want to use documentation and you can say you can export on your own, then that's great. If you say you want to just use labeling and you can export on your own, then that's great, right? But as much as possible, because we understand the whole process, right? If you go through the process, then, I mean, we can pinpoint, okay, where did this go wrong, right? If you say you just want to process documents with us, then that's great. We're able to tell you where it went wrong, particularly. But we're also able to scrutinize, like, hey, you're missing certain steps, right? And that's really because we act as a one-stop end-to-end platform, right? So
I find that fascinating how you are, on one hand, as a business, obviously you want them to be recurring. But on the other hand, you are actually okay to just enable them and then let them go off on their own. That's quite noble in a way, but don't you see it as a risk to plateauing the number of customers that you have because they go through you and then they've learned how to do it, now they'll go off, and then you'll have to hope for new customers all the time.
Well, there will always be small and medium businesses that we can help, right? So and for the people that want to do it on their own, there will also be markets where they will not be able to service that maybe we are able to service, right? So it's really a relationship where it's like, as much as possible, we only want to get paid for things that we are able to deliver, right? And so for us, of course, there are also other small and medium businesses that we can service. So if they don't get our service for that particular point in time, but we're able to help them in other ways, there is a certain loyalty still that they're able to give us. Either they refer us to other suppliers or buyers, right? Or they give us other parts of the business. Like, so for example, if they know how to export, they just give us labels, right? So I guess it's also nice because it's like we're not like you have to go to the system, right? So it's not like we're compelling them or we're telling them you shouldn't do it. It's really like wherever we can give value, then we just want to be paid for that. If not, then if we're not giving value, then you shouldn't be paying us. We shouldn't be getting your money.
Do you find that the SMEs that go to you, that they actually have a particular market country that they want to target already, or normally it's, hey, you know what? I want to export. Help me figure it out.
So it's three things. Normally, some people, mostly the micro ones, the ones that are not yet export ready, they don't really have like a particular export market in mind. They'll just say, "Oh, these are my products. Can you help me export?" And so we help
Mm.
them through that process from documentation until getting the buyer. There are people that tell us, "Hey, we have inquiries here in this particular area. Can you help us?" So they already have a market
Mm.
interest. You know, for example, in Dubai, like, oh, we want to export soaps or something, and then can you help us because we don't know the regulation, and so we help them with that. And then there are some people that are like, we've serviced this in this market, but we want to enter this market, so can you help us with this? So I guess it really depends on the stage of the business where you're in. Normally, if you're a micro or small business and you have no experience in exporting, you're mostly fluid in terms of like, okay, I want to export everywhere. Can you help me?
Mm.
But if you are either small or medium, you already have a particular interest somewhere. And if you're large, it's like you've entered most of the markets and then you need help in certain markets, in other markets.
Mm.
So yeah.
So for the companies themselves that export, um, is it based on consignment? I mean, do you get involved in whether the goods actually get sold on the other side? Or is this considered, well, we're only facilitating the movement of the goods? What happens commercially between the buyer and the seller, that's up to them.
Okay, so what we do is we're involved in selling. So normally it's not a consignment on our end. We make sure that the goods are either sold or they have terms, right? So the inventory risk that we take would be from the time that the goods come to our warehouse, which is 3 days before we ship out, from the time we ship it out, and then the shipping time involved, because we get paid once the goods arrive in the warehouse of the buyer. So that's how we normally do things. Um, what we normally, well, so yeah, so most of the products are sold already. As much as possible, we try to be involved in the whole process. But then there are instances where we're just in terms of the movement of goods. So yeah,
Mm.
so we do both. We do a little bit of both.
So you mentioned warehouses. So now you've got physical warehouses for a lot of these goods.
So we only rent the warehouse on a just-in-time setup. So when there's an order, we don't have a physical warehouse. We don't own a physical warehouse, but um, we rent the warehouse 3 days before we ship it out.
Ah, okay.
So it's really just in time. So it's just in time for us to sticker the products. It's just in time for us to process the documents. Just in time to move the products from the warehouse um, to the to the container. So it's really every order is well planned from the very beginning.
Mm. And with that, how do you see the impact of COVID right now on your operations?
Okay, so well, technically, of course, in a COVID situation or in the pandemic situation, people still need to export because you need to ensure sales, or you need to make sure that there's a way for. I mean, for example, most of the retail stores are closed right now, right? The
Mm.
only thing that's open would be supermarkets, right? And so the farther you are away from the need spectrum, then of course you won't have that much sales, right? And of course, if you don't have sales, how are you supposed to um, how are you supposed to give payroll or pay for payroll, right, of your employees or workers? And so I guess at the time of COVID, we're lucky enough to still be operating somehow in a skeleton workforce. I
Mm.
mean, so we still have shipments, we still have orders, we still
Mm.
have to make sure that there is supply readily available at any given point in time. Um, but so we're okay. But of course, it's harder to move because the current operations now is in a very skeletal system. So, I mean, documents are not processed as fast as we would have expected it, or sales, for example, in certain countries are stopped because people want to have their money, right? But we still push as much as we can because, of course, um, at the time of COVID and at the time of a looming financial crisis, because people don't have jobs, people need to sell, right? And because that's the only way you can augment. So we're lucky enough to still be operating at this time. Of course, there are other startups that are very much affected with the COVID situation, like tourism, travel, right? Service is highly affected. Um, and so, as much as possible, we try to really help the people who have been displaced in their jobs, or who are on mandatory leaves because of this. So yeah.
So let's assume we get over all these pandemic issues, right? And we look to the future a little bit. From a expansion of 1Export standpoint, I have two questions on this. Number one is, so which other countries are you going to be exporting to? And
Okay, from an expansion standpoint, actually before the COVID broke out, we actually started to work on expanding in Indonesia in terms of supply base. Because, well, one, we went through an accelerator, and we feel like you also have a lot of Indonesian immigrants that we can service to. So it seemed like there was a real fit for market. So Indonesia is one. We're also looking at Malaysia, Vietnam, and Myanmar as a market base for to supply products. For other countries to be importing to, once this COVID thing is over, we're looking at Europe. So we're looking at Nordic countries. We're looking at Middle East, of course, Saudi, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar. And we're also looking at other Asian markets. So of course, China is still like, if you service China, you service a lot of people. And so definitely there's a market there. But we really have to wait until this COVID dies down somehow, because at least once this is okay and everybody is healthy, then purchasing power will normalize eventually.
And yeah, so Indonesia, I guess the opportunity to export to Indonesia, but do you also see exporting the 1Export model itself to find
Yes.
SMEs in Indonesia to start exporting from?
Yes. Yeah, we actually, out of our 318, about 45 of them are from Indonesia, are small and medium businesses in Indonesia. Yeah, so we are starting to get traction, even if we're mostly based in Manila.
Oh, okay. So that's cool. So
Yeah,
additionally, then, do you need to have representatives down in Indonesia to really understand how it holds?
Right now, not yet, because of the COVID. But once everything normalizes, we're looking at maybe 1 or 2 people in Indonesia to help us with operations and sales.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So what's I guess coming to the end of the session now, the only really thing I want to ask is, so what your view of the future is beyond expanding it? What else do you want to do with 1Export?
Well, of course, the mission is to be able to help in terms of small and medium businesses export. That really is the mission. So we've expanded our current service offerings to not just compliances. Initially, we started as a compliance platform, but we've also done and dealt with sales because it's something that they need. We've even started to go into financing because it's something that they need. So really at this point, it's like wherever the need is, that's where we follow. And so we will expand our product lines accordingly based on that.
Oh,
So,
then I completely forgot about your fourth pillar, your new business of financing.
Yeah.
Conversation is
Yes,
not
yes.
over yet.
Oh, yeah.
So
No,
tell
but
me more about that.
financing was really because small and medium businesses needed to finance their orders, right? And how can they finance their orders if they don't have money to finance it, right? It was either we were going to spend so much time in terms of getting the orders until they get the money, or we help them with financing in general.
Mm.
So that's really how we're doing it.
So, running a crowdsourcing platform, that's a whole new business altogether, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
so tell me about that journey. How do you even start that? And, do you have to bring a new team
Um,
in?
Initially, before, because we're bootstrapped, the only money I only borrow money from my father, right? And we borrow money from friends and family.
Mm,
And of course, it came to a point where that channel was drying out because, there's only just so much money people can lend you, right?
mm,
And so when we opened it to institutional investors or people that wanted to make a return, um, we got a response where it was positive because technically it's a more secure investment than the stock market, right? Because the stock market will always be dependent on the market performance, right? So, for example, if you have COVID, then the market performance is down. Even if you say it goes up a little higher, it's still not going to guarantee anything until everything becomes okay. So, we normally just borrow short-term loans from individuals and people that want to invest, and they get a return between 6 to 10%. So, which is not bad,
very
because it's
good.
still per annum. That's not bad. That's not bad. It's really
Mm,
like it's a higher return than them putting their savings in the bank. Um, it's also a more secure return than the stock market. So that's really how we position it. And so with that, we've been able to get some level of financing.
Are you planning to do that as an automated way? Have a crowdfunding
Yeah,
platform? Or?
we're actually just waiting for certain licenses from the government. Um, but we've tested the model very manually by just issuing loans and loan agreements. We are in good credit standing, so because basically the order is secured. The buyer will pay for the order, but it will just take him maybe 30 days or 45 days to pay for the order. So we add the interest rate there.
Okay. Cool. So nothing else
Yeah.
from my side. All the
Okay.
best, I guess. And
Thank you.
you have a,
Well, if I go to Malaysia, I will definitely visit you. It's so nice to hear from you again. I mean, it's also nice to know that, we really started with Maybank FinTech Challenge, and, we really grew from there, right? I mean,
mm,
I guess the company that we were with Coins, right, who got acquired by Gojek. We were with Quickwire, who is also now doing very well because they're in the um, remittances for real estate, right?
mm.
They were in good company because they also mentored us to be, the startups that we are today, right? So, and then of course, like the friends that we've made through the times, right? The batch, Maybank FinTech Challenge batch, was a really good batch. I mean, they're really good.
Mm.
You had stock radars, right? Really good.
Yeah,
So,
funding
it was
societies,
like,
they're all doing well.
right? On these, yeah. So you had to perform because if you didn't, right, like, it was such an empowering community. So we're also happy to finally have gotten off the ground and are running now, and we're growing very well. And so actually at this point, we're also very happy to have some level of credibility over the past few years. So
Mm.
yeah. And
Good.
I mean, thank you again, because if not for the initiative of your department back then, right, there was not going to be a Maybank FinTech Challenge, and we would not have seen things. Maybe we would have we would not have seen things differently, and we would not have you know become the startup we are today. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad to have been part of that journey. Although it was the
Well,
blind lead, it was the blind leading the blind. So.
well, we're glad that we're where we are now, right? It's gotten we're in a much better position, right, as a startup, and of course Maybank is doing a lot of innovation initiatives, which is really nice.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, and I'm quite proud to see the alumni is doing very well. And as you say, hopefully we'll meet whether in the Philippines or in KL after all this COVID
Yes,
issues
yes,
have
definitely.
resolved.
Definitely.
Okay,
Definitely.
Mel.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Amran. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure talking to
Okay.
you. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.